Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I'm your host, Stephanie Michele. Today, we are going to be talking about life purpose. What does it feel like? What does it sound like to start to be triggered and hearing that voice of saying, this is your life purpose? And so, of course, as I always do, I try to share something personal and that hopefully you can relate to that is connected to what we're going to be talking about. And I want to be clear about something to start this conversation. So some people might cringe when they hear the voice inside of your head. And they might think of current news events and people doing terrible things. And maybe those people would say, oh, they heard a voice in their head and they carried that out. To be clear, when we talk about life purpose on the show, and I think in general I can make this statement, anything that would hurt another human being or another animal or anyone is not life purpose. That is not the conversation that we're going to be talking about. That is not the voice that we're talking about. A voice that's telling you to hurt somebody is definitely not a life purpose voice. Just wanted to put that out there. So to talk about my own journey with life purpose, I would say that my life purpose was revealed to me at around age 11, but at the time I didn't know that. And it was only later in life when I started to string these experiences together and I went, oh my God, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so my purpose, as you probably have guessed by now if you've been watching the show, is to inspire a deeper connection of relating. And I do this by advocating meaningful interactions with people and technology. We can't talk about how we're interacting with each other without addressing the technology in the mix and what we're doing there. And I also promote an exploration of context. I think because of technology, we've shrunk that window of looking at all the variables that make a situation what it is. And without that, we really don't know what's going on. We really don't have a clear picture of what's going on. We also need to be able to look at our own role in situations. This is context. It's being really clear about how did you affect that situation. So I like to encourage people to do that and really promote this exploration of context. I also think part of my mission is to debunk this myth of independence. There's no such thing. Everybody has people behind them, in front of them, mentoring them. There is no such thing as a self-made person. I'm sorry if you call yourself that. It does not exist. You have people, you have spiritual energy that you tapped into that helped you get to where you are, and it's not independence. And we shouldn't promote that in any way because it's false. I also believe that the biggest part of my purpose is to facilitate and get people back to feeling this, just feeling the joys and the bliss of how it feels to relate, that feel-good relating aspect that is somewhat like a spiritual connection to when you really allow yourself to be present with someone and connect and them see you. It just feels so amazing, and I know it's possible. I do this at an event every month that we're going to talk about on this show, but that to me is the brightest moment of my purpose, is to watch people have that experience and have that light turn on again where yes, it feels good to connect with people, and there are good people in the world to do that with. So these are the things that I focus on when I think about my purpose. And like I said, it was revealed through many experiences, even through my work. I do marketing for a living for different brands and clients. And when I started to develop formulas that allowed brands to really connect to their customers and really care about them and really understand them, I saw firsthand how that impacted everybody. So sales for the company, just a simple thing of really caring about how people are relating, and that just continued to put me on the path to hey, there's more here for you in terms of helping people relate. So that's my purpose. And why this? I say this in many different ways on the show, but for me, why I focus on this is because I know there's a ripple effect to relating well. When you start to pay attention to how you're relating, and you change everything. You change your experience, you change how you're experiencing things, and it becomes better. You have more awareness. I wasn't my greatest self in this situation. I'm going to try to do better. And then other people around you are doing it too, and there's just a better experience to be had by everybody, and it does ripple out into the world. So that's why relating is my thing and my purpose, and I'm so thrilled to be able to dedicate a whole show to talking about this today. So my guest wrote the book on finding your purpose. Her name is Carolann Fernandes, and she has a really interesting story, and I can't wait to get into this with you. So she is East Indian descent. Carolann was born in Malawi, Africa. Prior to her 10th birthday, her entire community was abruptly found themselves in the midst of a government overtaking, or given 3 days to flee the country. Her family lost everything. Carolann was a refugee in London, England, with her entire life packed into one suitcase. Eventually, she and her family immigrated to the U.S. Carolann has been on a personal growth and spiritual path for over 25 years. She has her master's degree in spiritual philosophy, psychology. She is the author of Mission Impossible. Mission
It's
Possible.
very possible.
Yeah, it's very possible. Thank you for correcting me. Mission Possible: How to Step into Your True Calling. And she's a researcher, she's a life coach, she's an activist, and she's a philanthropist as well. That was like a mouthful.
That was.
I need to drink water. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So excited to be having this conversation with you.
Yes, likewise.
So the first thing that I ask when people are here and they're sitting in this chair is, like, there anything that you just want to clear out, clear off your head, like just share before we get into more of our topical conversation that we're about to have?
Yeah, I have a silly thing.
All right.
I woke up this morning with a big bite on the side of my cheek. And I was like, what? Why now? Right? And then I was like, okay, I just have to surrender.
Yeah.
So I'm surrendering. But that was like, one of those things.
Well, I'm glad that I don't see it.
Okay.
And the great thing about you sharing it is now you took its power away. Like,
right.
It cannot steal the show.
Right.
It can't be the focus of it because you're like, you have no power over me.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. But I can't see it. Can you see it, Bea? No. Nobody can see it. All right. Awesome. So, so first of all, we've met before, and I didn't know this part of your story about the refugee experience. So talk to me more about that. Like, when you think about that moment, what really comes up in terms of what you were feeling, what you were going through?
Whew, that was just a super challenging situation, obviously. So for me, I was living, a very simple life in a lovely community, and it was an idyllic life to me. And then literally one night, my life was just changed completely. So as a child, I just remember my father, like the police knocking on the door in the evening, and they wanted to take my father in for questioning. My father complied. He seemed perfectly fine with it. My mother seemed terrified. So there wasn't a huge exchange between them, but I just knew that she was terrified. So as a child, I remember looking up at her and looking up at my father and going like, well, why is she so terrified? Why is he okay with it? Like, what's going on? And so the police said, oh, he'll be back in the morning, everything will be fine. So I went to bed, woke up the next morning, my father wasn't there. So pretty much all the men in our community, most of them had been taken away. They were disappeared for about a fortnight. So we didn't know what was happening to them, why it happened, where they were, what was going on. Then the women tried to shield us, the children. But everything was so abnormal, and they're trying to be normal about it, which I understand. And then the men were suddenly released one day, so my mother went to pick up my father. I remember being super excited to see my dad, so I drew a little picture and I wrote, roses red, violets blue, sugar sweet, I love you. And I stood in the foyer with this little drawing, like eagerly waiting for my father, and he walked in through the door with my mom, and I just froze. I was holding my picture and I was just staring at him because the man who walked in the door was not the man who had left, and so he had lost a lot of weight, he was gaunt, he had pneumonia, his hair was completely disheveled, he had lice, he had a long beard, something he'd never had before, so he was not in good condition. And I just remember my mother like marching him to the bathroom and running a bath for him and pouring like bottles of Dettol, which is a British antiseptic thing they use for any kind of disinfecting, right? So at that point, I think the men thought everything was over, and the next day they were told to show up at a certain place with their passports, and that's when they basically stamped them and said, you've got 3 days to leave. So.
And did they have to leave separate from the rest of the family, or was he able to come back?
No, he was able to come back. So all the men came back to their families, but it was basically, you guys need to leave, and that's an incredibly daunting task. They did extend a little more time to us, as this ordeal unfolded. but at the same time, you've got an entire community just trying to get rid of things, trying to figure out, like, where we're going, what do we do with everything. So I just remember my mother had the daunting task of whittling our entire lives into one suitcase. She was just throwing away things, the stuff. And I remember at one point, like, she had it could have been some wedding dishes or something, and I said, Mom, keep that. And she goes, no, we can't. And so in a sense, the loss of the stuff didn't matter to me so much. What really shattered my heart. So there was chaos, family members, friends split apart for a lifetime, the house, everything, all the stuff is gone. But we had 3 dogs. Yeah. And you're a dog lover, so you can understand. You just. So, anyways, we had 3 dogs, and we had to try and figure out what to do with them. And because we are such dog lovers, obviously, it really was a heartache for us.
Yeah.
And so we had 2 little ones and a German Shepherd. So I remember the first one, my mother found, somehow my parents found someone to take this little dog.
Yeah.
And he showed up in a station wagon with his 2 little girls who were a little younger than I was, and he whips out a checkbook and says, how much money do you want for this? And my mother was like, no, I don't want your money. And she was just really pleading with him, please, please promise me you'll give her a good home. And so he said, I will. And he took the dog from my arms. So I made the mistake of holding the dog. Took the dog from my arms, placed it in his little girl's arms.
Yeah.
And then in exchange, he gave me a candy bar. And I was so devastated. I was so angry at God. And I said, how could you do this to me?
That's not fair trade.
Exactly. I mean, I literally saw like the scales of justice and went, this is not a fair, how could you give me a candy bar in exchange for unconditional love? Totally. And my heart was really broken, And so this little dog was in this girl's arms, and I love that you have the tears.
I know,
we need the
having
Kleenex.
a hard moment over here. Everybody knows how I feel about my animals,
Right.
Including this fish.
I know, you're so lovely with this fish. So this little dog was in this girl's arms, for the first time. It was the first time she was away from us, so she was struggling to get free. Yeah. And so I cut across we had a large yard. I cut across the yard to kind of still see her, and then I noticed, she was frantically struggling. She managed to get loose, and no, in the car, in the station wagon. She gets out of the girl's arms, but she runs to the back of the car and she starts just.
No!
Yes.
No.
So that's what I remember, and there was a moment where I just stopped and I realized, and it was such a profound sense of hopelessness and helplessness. Like, I cannot rescue that little being, and it was so heartbreaking. And I remember standing there and thinking that I think a part of me wanted to fall to my knees because the pain was so excruciating for me. But I felt like if I fell to my knees, I would never get up. Yeah. I would shatter into a million pieces, like Humpty Dumpty. I wouldn't be able to be put back together again. And in that moment, I sort of made a decision. I said to God, I'm going to survive this. And it's like I literally put on armor because it was so profoundly painful, the heart wall. So that was the first one. The second one, I mean, there was obviously 3 stories, but the second one was also the German Shepherd. She was 13, so she was older, and she was very connected to my brother. So they grew up pup, like you had Tessa. He was a baby, she was a pup, they grew up together. So no matter what direction he went in, she would stay in that direction until he came home. Like, she loved him. So my mother knew that she would be completely heartbroken, if we were to leave us. So she made the decision, kind of like you did with Tessa, to put her, to euthanize her. And the vet couldn't, he was so busy, obviously, dealing with many different animals, and he said, I can't come over to your place. So, and she knew we had a large yard, so she knew that if she stepped out of the yard, she was going to the vet, because we never needed a walker, right? So it was really difficult to get this big German Shepherd in the car. So he gave us some sleeping tablets. He said, give her that, and when she gets groggy, you can put her in the car. And I just remember, people were moving out furniture, and she starts getting groggy. They put a tarp under her. And there was a moment when I just sort of turned around, and I see tears streaming down her face. And I said to my mother, I said, oh my God, she's crying. I'd never seen that before. And my mother whipped around, and then she just started bawling. And so the 2 of them were saying their goodbyes. And that was my moment, just watching the 2 of them. And it was, again, heartbreaking. But once again, it's that, oh my God, I'm going to fall to my knees. I will never get up. So the loss of everything, the stuff was fine. You can take the house, you can take the clothes, you can take anything. It was that unconditional love of those animals, and the 3rd one was given away, and he kept on. We didn't know this, but eventually we found out that he kept on running away from them, trying to get back home, and eventually he got run over. So those are the 3. God. So that was, that was the shattering.
There are tissues down here, by the way.
Oh, there are.
Because I know me.
We're both. I know. You're an animal lover, so you can completely relate. So that was. So that was probably the greatest heartbreak.
And so after all of that, did you drive out? Did you fly out?
We flew out. We ended up
out.
in London. And so Malawi used to be a British colony, so that's where my grandparents had migrated there. So my parents had British passports. We ended up in London as, pretty much as refugees. I had a suitcase with my life, in it. My mom reminds us that we didn't even have any like warm clothing, to pack for that. We weren't ready for that.
Yeah.
So that was incredibly jarring, So first of all, the loss of everything, it happened so quickly. There's no time to really grieve. We were on survival mode, So there's all this sort of baggage, all this grief coming with us, but at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in a new place, in a new world without, friends, community, there were family members, but not the way it was in Malawi. So
at what point do you remember as a kid trying to process this and go, why is this happening to myself and my family? Like, why us?
Yes. So there was a time. So I would go to bed this is in London. I would go to bed every night and I would cry myself to sleep, but I would do it sort of like quietly, And I always kept thinking, oh God, this is a bad dream. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be back in Malawi. I'm going to be back in Kansas, right? And every morning I'd wake up and it's like, no, I wasn't back in Malawi. And so there were certain, so I went through that for a little bit, and then after a time I got to this place of searching and asking God, like, why did this happen? And almost to the point of, was it because, I remember one time thinking, is it because I like swatted that fly, killed a fly? And that's the little child going, trying so desperately to understand, like, why did this happen to me? It doesn't make sense. How could it? And grasping at just any little thing to sort of try and figure it out, but there were no answers.
Do you see the connection to this experience and why it's important to you to help people with their purpose?
So yes, in a couple of ways. So when I was a child in Malawi, at the age of 6, I knew that I had a purpose. I didn't know what it was, and I knew I would be in the U.S. So I never sat to think about, well, how am I going to get there? What is my purpose? So it's like one moment I would have this knowing, and the next minute I'm playing on my bike and I'm having a good time. I'm a 6-year-old. So I think what this did for me is, because it was so jarring, it was so painful, there was so much to process. And when I was in London, it was the first time that I really experienced racism. So just dealing with that ism was shocking in and of itself. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So one minute I'd have conversations with God at the bus stop. All right, so God, I'm not understanding this on an intuitive level. This doesn't make sense. And then I go really logical. Okay, God, if you cut us up, we're all the same on the inside. It's not making sense to me. But what it did was that it caused me to question reality. It propelled me on a path of personal growth and spirituality because of the pain, because of the things that didn't make sense. And so that's what sort of...
I like this question reality thought. I think that when this is how you find your purpose, this has got to be one of the steps, because when you start to look around and go, I don't like what I'm experiencing. This can't be it. This can't be the way it should be. And then there's just this natural progression. Well, how can I affect it? Like, how can I change it? Can I make a difference? Because I'm not really accepting this the way that it is.
Right.
Like, I like that expression.
Yeah, it was really quiet, because it's like, this doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So let's talk more about what you've discovered about purpose, really. Like, what does it take to really tune in to finding that? So if someone was to sit here and say, I don't know what mine is, Carolann, like, where do I start? What would you tell them?
So for me, a part of it is really leaning into the thing that you have passion for. And we hear that all the time. But I really think there's something to that. Lean into the things that you have joy for. Lean into the things that, really come easily to you, that you might just absolutely dismiss. So for me, I always had a passion for personal growth and spirituality. And so even though I was searching for my mission, so I'll share with you this. I had gotten into the world of real estate, and I had listed a 42-unit condominium complex, which was like a big deal, you know. So I go to this lovely new building in my lovely suits, showing this lovely model, like, that was decorated, like Vanna White, I do the thing. And it was great, and I enjoyed it. And sometimes it would get really hectic, and then I would steal into one of the empty units just to get some downtime, to catch my breath, center myself. And in those moments, I would hear like a little voice. You started the show talking about that little voice that said, you know you didn't come here to do this. Right? So it was like, okay, the first time I'm hearing that, I'm thinking, okay, I'm really stressed out. I'm hearing this voice. But this voice, the intuitive voice, was relentless. And I understood, and I would literally be shown like a fork in the road. And I knew that if I were to continue down the path that I was, that I would get so lost in it that I would forget like my purpose, so to speak. And I knew that I was meant to take the path less traveled, but that was scary to me. It's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what this looks like, you know. So I would just kind of, all right, thank you for sharing, bye-bye. And I would go back into my world, right? But it was so relentless. I finally was like, all right, already, I will lean into this, you know. And then I decided, you know, I would rather have tried and failed than to go to my grave going, woulda, shoulda, coulda. I didn't want to live with regret. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to start, you know, searching for it. So what I didn't realize is that one of the things that I had passion for was always, personal growth was always in my life because of what happened. Spirituality, it just sort of unfolded. So the thing is,
helped you get through these situations, really. Like without,
So, but it was a big part of who I was. And so I'm thinking, well, I've got to, you know, find my purpose, and I'm very serious, you know, and looking for my purpose. Meanwhile, life was unfolding exactly and perfectly as it was meant to be, leading me from one teacher to the next, one experience to the next, and it was perfectly unfolding me. And it was really endeavoring to deliver me to my purpose. I didn't know that. So I took for granted the fact that I had such a passion for personal growth. So when I would say to someone, if you have a passion like that, it's something that you may take for granted. It's something that you may be really good at that no one else can do as easily as you can, and you might just dismiss because you're thinking, well, everyone can do this. And so it's like, pay attention to that. Pay attention to the things that bring you joy. Pay attention to the things that cause you to expand, you know, rather than contract, or, you know, and feel that. And so that's, I think, the beginning part of discovering it. And I think a big part of it is also holding the intention, you know, that I want to do this, and keep asking for guidance in a way that you or anyone else can understand, you know. So you're getting clues, but it's like, okay, you know, Divine, can you help me decipher these clues, or present it to me in a way that I can understand? And I think that's the start of the journey.
I can relate to that. I think what I'm hearing is sometimes it starts out as a little bit of a nagging voice, and I've experienced this. It's like, keep pursuing this, you know, this is your thing, keep, you know, you're onto something, you're good at this. And I've also experienced you know, realizing that, there is something that I'm really good at that I have taken for granted. And relating it is one of these things. It's like, there's things that are so second nature for me, and even in the work that I do, of like just really trying to understand the people that I'm going to connect with, you know. And connection in many terms for my work is like customer and brand, or, you know, customer and company, but taking it to the next level where it's like, it's people actually care about each other, you know. And I run through these variables of like how to make that connection very quickly, that I've sometimes have found myself taking it for granted, or like, how do you know that? I'm like, oh, well, because I've gone through these steps already. But yeah, I think the voice started out as a little bit nagging, and then there's a part that unfolds where it's like, in order for you to stay on purpose, it is kind of open yourself up to what else can you receive to help you get there? You know, what mentors, what people, what spiritual guidance. And a lot of that for me has been surrendering to that. Like, I do a lot of surrendering prayers because I'm a very type A busybody, you know, I can do this, you know, person. And which there's not a lot of peace in that. That kind of goes back to what I started the show with about independence. There's not a lot of peace in independence. Peace comes through this, connecting and having mentors and having people support you, and, you know, feeling good about those relationships. But so I have to check myself and just go, I don't got this. I got to let go, and stuff comes in. You know, those signs and supportiveness, and people come into your life, and the next mentor, the next experience, and then it's so clear.
And
you
seamless.
String it together. It's like, oh, that happened, and I can trace now my purpose back to a moment when I was 10 or 11 years old, and then to see the different events string into that. I actually just got goosebumps when I said that.
Yeah.
To see them unfold and go, okay, that's the next one that's taking you to the next point and to the next point. So I can totally relate and validate what you're saying because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
So how do you think most people, are there other ways that people learn about their purpose other than kind of the nagging voice?
So I think so I feel like several things sort of happen. One is that leaning into the passion. One is perhaps the intuitive voice kind of guiding. But some people say, well, I don't have that. I don't know. I just don't know. And so from my research, what I found is that I believe that every single one of us is initiated.
Yeah.
So I feel like life is preparing us from day one, from the moment you're born. There are clues with your parents, clues in childhood. There are clues all around. And that's what I put in my book. But there comes a moment, so life is preparing you, and then all of a sudden you will be initiated. There's a defining moment that happens for people. So for those people who say, I have no clue, there is a moment. And it's about, so that's what I'm hoping is that people will have the wherewithal to notice it, to notice that moment and to recognize it for what it is.
And I think what's hard about that, I agree with that too. What's hard about that in today's society is everything is it's all about instant gratification. Like, I want this now. I need to know this now. If I don't know it, I'll Google it. I'll figure it out. And timing doesn't work that way. Like timing about learning who you are and experiencing love and authenticity. There's no time guidelines on that, and your timeline is not somebody else's timeline. So we have to be really careful about not being envious of someone that may be onto that, and it might happen at a very young age.
Yes.
And you're like, I don't know what mine is. Well, you know what? Your time hasn't come yet.
Exactly.
And you don't know. You might be the person at 75 years old that inspires everybody to live youthfully, and it had to be 75 or, some strange number for it to impact people the way that it has. So I would encourage people, like, you don't measure yourself by anybody else's purpose or discovery of it or path to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because it's going to happen in its own time.
Yeah.
And as much as you're looking for your purpose is looking for you. So when it finds you, it's never going to let go.
Yeah.
And it does not have a shelf life.
Yeah.
So it's like these gifts come through us, they're not from us. So they're always, they're always there. We can push it aside, pretend it doesn't exist, get busy with life, whatever, but it's always there.
It's always there. I think the flip side of this coin is, I like to say, and I've experienced this, as we miss the opportunity to learn something, the consequences get greater and greater and greater.
Yes,
until you get it. And that's part of the voice of purpose too. It's like it's telling you, you had to learn this lesson in order to get on the other side. This had to happen to you. I kind of feel this way. I'm literally dying to interview Billy Bush. And if you're watching Billy Bush, or if you know Billy Bush, please tell me, because I want to interview him, because you know who I'm.
Yes.
Okay. I think he got such a hard deal with losing his job over that Trump interview, because he was a reporter, and as a person or an interviewer, can relate to some of the things that he has said post this occurring. Was like he was trained to be able to like bring out a person and their authenticity, whether it's good or bad, but so they would share, and so he was probably in that moment doing things to bring out the personality of Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
And then we know what happens. And he has since gone on record about what he's learned from that experience, and it's a really beautiful story about relating and now I know, and now I want to be more authentic and not show this kind of goofy, playful side all the time on camera, and I think the circumstances at which he was relating had to change for him to get on the other side, and I suspect this man now is very aligned to his purpose. I don't know what it is. I expect big things for him the next time he's on TV, but I think he's hit it, It just, you could see it unfold. But so you can't measure yourself against somebody else's.
No, not at all. It's really a personal journey.
Totally personal. So we talked about kind of receiving the signs. What else can we say to somebody that's seeking it? Like, what are just kind of the different levels to kind of almost make it a practice, I guess, to seek purpose and then to act on that? What would you?
Yeah, there's a story that comes to mind. A woman by the name of Genevieve Pittoro, and she had, a thriving career, was doing very well, and knew that she had come to the end of her rope, right? Like she was done, she had climbed the corporate ladder, and she knew that there was another step for her. And what was beautiful about her story is that her husband, and she got married later in life, and he kept on saying, keep asking until you get the answer. So that's what I would say to people, keep asking until you get the answer. If you are really searching for your purpose, keep asking, and be open to the guidance that is coming to you. And it may not happen like instantly where you suddenly know the next day, but it will reveal itself to you. And so I think it is a practice in that sense, and being open to that and holding an intention for that, and it absolutely will unfold.
And in weird moments too. I think sometimes we try so hard for it to happen at a certain time, but maybe a new experience when you stop thinking about it for a moment.
Right.
And you go out and like, I'm going to go to a museum today. I've never gone to a museum, but I'm just going to go and just kind of be in the now and look at some paintings, some smart,
Yeah.
And those sometimes are the moments where like something just so clear.
Just comes clearly, right. And so getting back to her, she was, so she's asking, and then one day she's in the subway, and all of a sudden she just hears this word, pajamas. It's like a download.
Yeah.
That was the initiation. That was the unfolding off her mission. That was the unfolding off the next stage of her evolution.
Yeah.
So it just suddenly happened. There it was. So yeah, it can happen at any moment, any time, but it'll make itself known.
It totally. You can't do anything more to like listen for it.
Yeah.
It's like you just have to state that you're available.
Yeah.
And keep the intention.
And then recognize when it happens, like, hey, there's something to this.
And I would say on that, it's harder to recognize moments like this if you're glued to your phone.
Yes.
I'm just saying, I mean, if that thing is pulling so much attention and is literally hacking our brains, and when we're flipping through, Instagram feeds or Facebook or whatever, and we've all experienced this where you've been too far into it and you're like, oh my God, 10 minutes just went by, or now I'm thinking about something totally different, or I actually have anxiety because I've seen something that triggered me and I'm not stopping to go, oh, that triggered me, I should get off here. For me, a lot of it is, people telling us women how to dress or be or whatever, and it doesn't land well, and I'm like, I shouldn't be watching this, I shouldn't be looking at this. That's why I don't buy Vogue magazine or any of those magazines anymore. But anyhow, but yes, I don't think it's going to happen while you're devoting time to your screen and not to yourself. Like these kinds of things happen through meditation, through really just doing nothing and being with yourself.
It's about being. It's you can be out in nature, in the garden, whatever. But it's just really a sense of being, and it does it at the most unique. It happens. It happens. It really does.
What else do you want to share about purpose?
Well, so I feel that. So a couple of things. I feel that people are initiated, and that's where I'd like for them to really just take a moment and kind of sit with it, and see either it's happened to them or it's going to happen to them. So to me, it happens in one of four ways. One is that download that I was talking about. So some people get this very clear. So J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, right? She was apartment hunting. The train was delayed. She's sitting in a train station, and she sees this story just unfolding very clearly. So it's not like other stories. This thing really grabbed her attention. She saw that little boy. She saw his spectacles. He's an orphan. He's a wizard. He's at a train station, and it grabbed her so much that she jotted that down, and so.
Thank God she did.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So how many other people are there who are also getting that download? And so I've seen that happen for many people. Whether it's the pajama, that woman Genevieve, where she hears pajama, but it happens for people in that manner. So it's like pay attention to that. For other people, it's simply like a life-altering situation, something that they never expected. So I have a friend by the name of Bill Geralds, and he creates these lovely angels, and I love angels. So Bill was actually running these large call centers for large companies, AT&T, And one day he just suddenly gets sick, like his lung collapses. They rush him to the hospital. He starts getting worse, second lung collapses, and all kinds of things are going on with his body. So the doctors put him in an induced coma, call his wife and say, you know, come on down. We need to get your permission to stop the treatment, because basically they figure this man is going to die.
Yeah.
And she says, you don't know my husband, and I'm going to have faith for all of you, and my husband's going to walk out of here. So as soon as that conversation happened, he started actually getting better. He started gaining strength, and his body started fighting, you know, the infections, etc. So Bill comes out of this, but he has memory loss. He only has short-term memory. And it was a struggle. So he's, you know, he's trying to go back to his old career, and it's just not working for him. He doesn't fit there anymore, right? 2 years later, all of a sudden when he announces to his wife, he goes, I'm going to start creating angels. Right? And she's thinking, how, what, you know?
Right.
So this man didn't have, you know, he wasn't creative, he wasn't into angels, you know, he had never used a saw in his life. So she's thinking like, what is he going to do? And then a neighbor happens to give him a saw.
Yeah.
So she's terrified because she's like, he's going to hurt himself, right, with a saw. So he goes away, I don't know if it was to the garage or whatever, locks himself up, you know, several hours later comes out with this, and they show me this huge angel, about yay big. They still have it, made out of lots of pieces of plywood.
Wow.
It is so extraordinary that, and he says it's a gift from God. This didn't come from him. His life was completely turned around. He allowed the emerging of this, and his mission is to bring joy to people. You know, so, and people have talked about, you know, being, receiving the joy, receiving miracles that have happened for them. And, you know, I collect his angels. I found them at the Inn of the Seventh Array, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love these angels.
Yeah.
And so I got a chance to meet him. But that's what I mean by a life-altering situation that you can't account for.
Yeah.
But something else is wanting to emerge, and it's allowing that to emerge.
What's coming up for me, I love this. The download, and we've probably all experienced them, but you know, and think if you're listening to this right now, if you're watching this, like, have you? Like, where is that download? And now that you know that this could happen, journal it. I think you should write it down.
Yeah.
And then life-altering experiences. But what's mostly coming up for me and what you're sharing goes back to the title of your book. It's possible. Like, there's so much going on in religion and spirituality where people are turned off. Okay, and I know that, and I know the reasons for it, and I've experienced definitely the turn off in like the religious communities. But what do you have to lose by just believing something's possible? Absolutely nothing.
Right.
Absolutely nothing, right?
Absolutely.
Just the openness of like, well, it's possible is where a lot of this starts to come into play.
Be open to the possibility. That's where the miracles happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like it.
And I wanted to add one more to this.
Absolutely.
The third one is like an extreme fascination. It's where someone is just grabbed by something and they can't let it go. So an example, you know, we all know Quincy Jones, I think, right? So he's a music icon, but you know, he had a rough life as a child growing up. I don't think he saw himself as a musical genius. And then one day, and he was talking about how as kids, I believe this was in Bremerton, Washington, they would break into the local armory and they would eat the meringue pies and the ice cream and what have you. And he broke into like the superintendent's office one day, and he sees an upright piano on a little stage, and he's about to close the door, and a voice says, no, you need to go in there. He goes in there and he's staring at the piano. And then he starts, you know, he tinkled with the piano. And then he said every cell in his body told him in that moment, this is what he's going to do for the rest of his life. I get chills just, you know, thinking about that story. But in that moment, there was that sort of extreme fascination that suddenly awoke in him, right? And so when he went back to school, he started throwing himself into learning every instrument possible. This kid like just dived into music. So there's this extreme. It's not like a little, oh, I'll just try one little instrument and see how that goes. This is like, no, full on. And I think it's in the same way that I had an extreme fascination and passion for mission. Like this has been going on since, you know, I was 6 years old. Like I can't let go of it. Even when I was writing the book, I mean, there were times when I enjoyed the research and stuff, but there were times when I wanted to walk away from it. Like, this is just not fun. And every time I'd walk away from it, like another story would synchronistically come around me, like, oh, there it is, there's that pattern again. And I'd be like hooked right back, and I'm like, all right. You know, after going through this several times, I just need to surrender. I just need to go through the process and just, you know, sort of birth it. You're going through like a birthing process, you know. So, and then the fourth one I want to say is a combination of one of the three.
One of the three.
Yeah.
So the download, the extreme life change. Or,
life-altering situation.
Life-altering situation.
and then extreme fascination. Where
extreme fascination, and then the fourth one is a combination of all of them.
Yeah.
That makes sense. There's a question. This might be my purpose, kind of going, ask her this question.
Yeah.
I plan to ask you this question. Why, you said at 6 years old you knew you were going to the U.S. and you wanted to do this work and you wanted to help people. Do you remember why the U.S.? Like, why is this girl in Africa? What were your feelings about the U.S.? Like, what does it have to happen here? Or why did you want to go to?
So I don't think I consciously chose the U.S.
Yeah.
It's almost like I just feel on a soul level I knew that I was destined to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really sat down to think about that as a 6-year-old. It was just like, I'll be there, right? And then sure enough, I end up here.
Yeah.
And if someone had told me what I would go through to get here, I'd have said, thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
Just leave me there, I'm good.
Yeah.
Leave me there with my 3 dogs and I'm
Yeah.
good. But I've also come to believe that there's a reason my soul chose to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And in Southern California, I think this is like sometimes the cutting edge of, I want to say, the spirituality, personal growth and spirituality. I think there were so many things I want to say in my backyard. I started going to see Marianne Williamson.
Yes.
She was here in LA. That was one of the teachers along my journey.
Yes.
I remember when I started getting like the guidance, intuitive guidance, like, you need to do your master's degree now. So I was like, all right. So this is the first time I listened to it, because sometimes I fight that intuitive voice.
Yeah.
And there's someone on the other side going, can you just listen for once? Come on. So then I went to USC, UCLA, and I was at UCLA, and I was walking across the quad, and I felt like I was wading through molasses. And I said to my higher self, like, I'm doing what you're telling me to do, but why does it feel so heavy? Mm-hmm. And that's because that wasn't the right path for me. Mm-hmm. And then my best friend happened to see this ad at Agape, the spiritual center, mm-hmm. right? So he was at Agape. We were at Agape. He sees this ad, and it says Masters in Spiritual Psychology. And he's like, oh, we have to go check this out. And I'm like, oh no, because I'm thinking, what's this airy-fairy Masters in Spiritual Psychology? I'd never heard of that before, right? And he was so insistent. He goes, come on, let's just go check it out. The moment I walked in there, I just had, like, every cell of my body lit up. Mm-hmm. I knew that this is where I was meant to be. It was the same thing with Agape because he took me to Agape as well. And he goes, you've really got to check this out. And everything unfolded, just in a beautiful way. So, we are guided. So I feel that I was here, and all these amazing teachers were right here, right in my backyard. So sometimes, like when I'm on the 405 freeway and I'm stuck in traffic, I'm pinching myself, and sometimes I think, wow, was I really born in Africa? Did I really live there?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. And also, I'm also grateful that I've had so many amazing teachers, whether it has been Marianne Williamson, Agape, master's degree of spiritual psychology with Ron and Mary Holnick. I've had some amazing people.
Yeah. Thank you for answering that question. I moved here from Texas, and when I left, I'd only been to California once, and when I left, I threw a party and set up Stephanie's Growing to California.
Love it.
And I felt some of the same reasons. Like, I knew, I started to really realize that I would do work around relating and behavioral science and those things, and I just knew that I would be I'd have a better chance of being in touch with mentors and teachers and actually being pushed. I think, like, if I'd stayed where I was, I wouldn't have been pushed into, like, expanding the work or expanding my mind or expanding what that purpose looked like. And I also felt like that the work would be more inspired because it's needed more here. Mm-hmm. Because there is such a melting pot of different energies and people here, right. That and the influence of entertainment and technology and all of that stuff that that I would there would be a better chance for that to grow here. So I was curious, like, both times when you said the U.S., I'm like, I want to ask her this if we had a similar sort of not just the U.S. but California. Yeah. In particular.
So I didn't pick California. I think my soul picked California. My soul knew that this is because my aunt was here and she sponsored us here. Yeah. So I just feel like this is where I was destined to be. But I have a question for you.
Okay. All right.
You said at 11 you had this an experience. So can you share more about that?
Yeah, I can. I don't know if I shared this before. So I can remember a moment when my mother and my stepfather at the time were fighting. It was around Christmas time. And it was, I remember it's Christmas because I'm sitting behind, I don't know if they knew I was in the room, I was sitting behind a Christmas tree and I'm rocking with this Ewok stuffed animal that I had. So that tells everybody how old I am actually if you do the math. And I'm just remembering just kind of watching them. They were very upset. They were calling each other names. And I just remember thinking, there's got to be a better way at this. Like, I think there's probably things they agree on. And like, this just doesn't seem very productive. I'm sure my 11-year-old self didn't say, this is not productive. But I just kind of over and over, like, there's just got to be a better way. I wish they, could, talk better to each other. This wouldn't be so painful for everybody. Like, I wanted to fix it, know? I wanted to help them, but I didn't know how, and just was convinced that there was a better way to do it. And that was the first moment. And when I start to track them back, I'm like, that's the first one. Yeah. The Ewok. All right. Well, we're going to switch gears and learn a little bit more about you.
Okay.
So what I like to show is, like, at any given time, how we're relating can change. And the best way that I can do this in a short period of time is just to ask you an off-topic question.
Okay.
Because it definitely will change the energy in the room. And sometimes these are goofy, and sometimes they're very serious. Yeah. Let's see what we get. Have you ever walked in on anyone having sex?
Nope.
No? All right. Let's see what else we got.
Actually, I take that back. I take that back. This is going all the way back to Malawi. In
really?
childhood. Yeah, it was our hired help. Our hired help.
Yeah.
And I walked in on, they were having sex.
Oh my gosh.
I was so, I was
probably didn't even know what it was.
No, I didn't. I was like,
that looks interesting.
Right. So, yes, I suppose technically I
Well, I'm sure you'll thank me later for having you relive that moment.
Remembering that one, yes.
All right, here's the next one. Are we more likely to receive proof of an alien life or God?
I heard God, then I heard alien, and then I heard both.
Yeah.
Because I think we're already, science is already saying what the spiritual community has been saying, like there's a coming together, like with quantum physics and stuff like that, so that's already in process.
There's proof or talks that, we're not alone, right? We're not alone in our solar system. And
sometimes I think that's a little arrogant to think that we are the only life force here. It's like, really? Come on. So,
And there's so much interesting conspiracy around these things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I say both.
So you say both?
Both.
I say God, then aliens, maybe.
Yeah.
But if we had to pick an order or a sequence.
That's the order, right?
All right. Last question. Would you rather be an American Idol judge or a Supreme Court justice?
Ooh.
Right?
Supreme Court justice.
Me too. Especially right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm actually like a political junkie, so I've had this fascination for politics.
Yeah.
And
Awesome. I think that would be awesome. All right. We're going to switch gears again. Thank you for that. We got to learn a little bit more about Carolann. The last thing that I like to do on the show and ask guests to participate in is do what we call a heart swell. And basically it's just a shout out to someone that you really just want to acknowledge as someone that's made a difference in your life, that has impacted you in a way that you're just so grateful for and you feel like they deserve a shout out. I do this because I feel that it shouldn't be so scary to share deep feelings, and we should do this more and acknowledge people. Like I said at the top of the hour, there is no such thing as independence. We've all had people that have affected and impacted our life in a really meaningful way. So I'm hoping that by having everybody do this, that more people will do it, that we have that ripple effect.
That's beautiful. I love that.
So does someone come to mind? And you're welcome to do it more than one person.
Oh my gosh, like a whole crew like popped in my mind.
Really?
But really, I think the first people that I will start with are my parents. And I just really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has not been an easy journey by any stretch of the imagination on all levels. But I'm so profoundly grateful to you for all that you have done for me, all that you have given me, and for the extraordinary sacrifices that you have made on my behalf. And there may have been times when I didn't acknowledge that, but it has never been lost on me for all that you have done for me. And I love you profoundly, deeply, madly.
I can feel that. I say this a lot. wish somehow I could allow people that are watching and hearing this to feel the feeling that gets shared in this room. You know, when we're just sitting and having a conversation, and I don't believe people are doing this enough. I think we're doing it, you know, in very short little tidbits of text. They're 10 minutes, but it takes like 40 minutes or 30 minutes to like really feel, you know, the heart of somebody, and I just completely felt that.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole room felt that. So did you feel that? He's like, yeah, he felt it too.
And I also just want to really acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for what you've created here. And I've said this to you before, but going from concept to really making this happen, you know, kudos to you. And I did that relating event with you, and it was so amazing and wonderful that you know, stripped us off our cell phones, but really got us to this beautiful place of relating, of strangers relating, and it's so beautiful. So I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. She's talking about PSC, guys, and we have one tonight, so we're going to talk about it one more time before we end. Well, I really appreciate you being here. I definitely will be sharing Carolann's website. It's actually on screen right now, so people can find out more about you and your work, and maybe you know, have her be your life coach. She's got a lot of great things to offer. And I will also share the link to the book so you can get a copy of Mission Possible, How to Take Steps to Your True Calling. You'll be able to find out where that is. So. One last thing that we can do together, so I usually issue a social challenge.
Okay.
Just for people to try this week. So if we said, you know, if we're going to try to find something that you can do around purpose, what do you think that first step is? Maybe just kind of this surrendering, like if you're interested in finding your purpose, like just actually set the intention.
Yeah.
And then see what happens, and journal some moments where, like Carolann was expressing earlier, maybe look for the moments, the download, something that really, you know, really gets you excited, or maybe think about a life change and maybe journal a little bit about it.
Yeah, I would journal that, and I would also really want to encourage people to just be, whether it's taking a walk on the beach, walking in nature, not doing anything. Just be, and allow whatever needs to come forward or bubble up inside of you to come forward. So.
Love that. Yep, it's in those moments, the quiet moments under the stars, the walks on the beach, that these things come through.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so set the intention and then find some quiet moments, like really work some quiet moments into your life this week.
Into your busy life,
you know, if purpose is important to you, or just kind of reconnecting. Maybe you've had it and you've had to push it aside because life has gotten in the way. Maybe this is the time to reignite it this week and find these quiet moments and initiate and say, hey, I'm into it. I'm into hearing the messages again. Give it to me. So that's your social challenge for the week. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to share all of your links after the show. Next week, I'm going to start this series where I start to interview the people in my neighborhood. And I'm so thrilled to have this guy on. His name is Hal Bastian, and he is literally Mr. Downtown Los Angeles. He's going to be amazing. And as we were talking about earlier, there is a public shared experience tonight. We call it PSE. She has been before, and so what she was talking about is just that. Like, it's a group of strangers that you know, we come together with the intention, like we actually want to feel good relating. We want to like just have an experience together. It's often what we're doing at these events is just clearing out the distractions so people actually can connect, and things are said in the moment that you need to hear. Those are always the moments that we have at PSE, that something is said by somebody else. And I believe what we're doing is calling in spiritual energy to allow that to flow.
Right.
But we have to clear everything out in order for that to happen. And people who say things to the other person and it becomes a gift to them are surprised that they were like, I don't know where this came from, but I said it to you. And so we have those moments, and then we have the moments where it's like, yeah, I needed to be here right now, in the now, with this group of people. That's what we do. That's tonight at 7 p.m. at the Relational Center. You can find out more information on my site at stephaniemichele.com. Love to see you guys there. That would be awesome. And we have them once a month, so if you can't make this one, look on my site for the next date. And that brings us to the end of our interview. I'm so glad that we got to do this.
Yes.
And we'll talk more afterwards.
Yes.
Some questions. And you know, as always, guys, I'm just going to encourage you to relate with more curiosity. It starts there. If you want to have this ripple effect of relating and have the experience of like feeling better about how you're doing it and it impacting your ecosystem of people around you, It just starts with curiosity. That's it. It's that simple. So relate with more curiosity. See you next week.